We're starting our Peeragogy meeting here. I have Karen Einstein, I have Charlotte Pierce, and there's me. So far, I'm sure others will join us as we continue. I'm not sure here what we're going to speak about, if there's an agenda or anything. I think there's a number of pending issues, such as the publication of the Peeragogy Handbook, the next edition. I'm not sure if we want to provide an update as far as that goes. And there's the dashboard that somebody's been working on. And I'm not sure if there's anything else.
Is there anything else, Charlotte?
There's a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, apparently.
Let me.
Yeah, why don't you sit in the big chair?
Okay.
In the big girl chair.
And then I can do some screen shares if we need to.
Yeah.
That worked. That was nice when you were sitting up there last time because it looked like there were a bunch of people around and stuff.
Well, there are.
There are. Yeah. I'm
There's
sorry.
live plants too.
I've been on my bike and so is Karen, and we're all like.
And it's very hot out.
We're athleted out.
It's like 90s, no rain in weeks.
Right. So we're going to have to put our heads together and have to figure out how to fix the weather peeragogically. Do you want me to get started on the, just show you the dashboard?
That would be fantastic. I don't know if it's repetition for anybody else, but I somehow seem to miss that. And
I don't think it needs, I mean, it might be, but it's evolving so fast that it really isn't repetition.
Okay.
Let's see. I can do, let's see, Peeragogy in action. Yeah. Okay. I'll do this one. Maybe I'll do this one and take a new tab over there. Okay. Well, I went to the, or Karen actually, we went to the dashboard, the previous link, and it was broken. So I don't, yeah, it's broken. Maybe I didn't put the right link in there. But let's see, how can I find it? Peeragogy, carrying capacity in Google Docs. Peeragogy Handbook, GitHub. Okay. Why don't you talk about something while I try and find it?
Okay, Lisa, do you have any fun kind of applications for Peeragogy that you ran into this week, or any times during the week that you felt it was useful?
Well, actually, I was reading Joe's book, Creativity, the book that Joe recommended.
Yeah.
And it's about the guy who started Pixar.
Oh, cool.
And it was really interesting. And I agree with Joe. I think there's very strong elements of peeragogy, and it was really important for me, or interesting, particularly from my perspective, because I'm interested in how peeragogy impacts business and can influence business. And his concentration was on it from creating a culture which allowed for creativity.
Oh.
And so his focus was on creativity, but I think the lessons he learned and many of the things that he put into place are important regardless of whether or not your organization is a creativity-based organization, because organizations are problem-solving all the time, which is generally, at least at some element, a creative endeavor.
Right.
And a lot of those principles and a lot of those ideas, are very relevant to any organization.
Right.
So he really didn't have principles, but it was interesting to me too how he looked at things, because it was very similar to how I was looking at things when I was working for larger corporations.
Yeah.
And I think and in having him write about it, I could follow along and think about what he was saying, and think about my perspective, how it evolved for me too. And I was thinking too, it's a very different way of approaching things than from a typical, say, MBA sort of standpoint. And it comes to it comes to language, it comes to how you just perceive things. And interestingly enough for me too, there was a similarity too, because when I started college, I was a physics major. I got my degree in math because it was quicker to get through, and I needed to get through quickly. So I switched to math. I left the door open to physics that way. I was around a lot of physics people though while I was pursuing my undergraduate degree. But he has a physics background, and and his background was physics also. And I think when I was reading the book, it was striking me how he was looking at things very differently, or in a very different way from how business people normally approach situations. And I think that had a bit to do with his background in physics a little bit, because you're kind of looking for unseen forces and trying to explain things.
What's the name of the author again?
It's Ed. This is one of my things. Kamel. Let me see.
How do you spell it?
I'm checking here. Sorry.
Camull.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like a brilliant book. Is it well written?
Yeah, it was interesting from my perspective. I thought it was well written. I thought it was really interesting, and but that some of that I don't know how much of it is me, because it was a lot of the lessons he learned and a lot of the things he said. He did so in the context of trying to create an organization in which creativity was important. My background is more automotive, but a lot of those things were still applicable. Very applicable, and I could see them working at different times in the organizations that I worked with.
Oh, wow!
So it was for me. It was really interesting because it's one of the few times that I really have read a book like that explains this in a way, or no, I should say, from somebody who's actually seen it applied,
right?
And the challenges of maintaining that in a dynamic business environment. You can have the theoretical, here's how it works sort of thing.
Right.
But this was the challenges of trying to maintain that culture. And maybe not necessarily knowing at all times what that culture was, as far as being able to say it's a culture of, you really can't put words to it.
Right.
But knowing what he's trying to facilitate.
Wow, that's
yeah. So I thought it was really it was really relevant from my perspective. It was really applicable to what I
read that. I know Joe had put it up, and whenever he does, I pay attention. Oh, yeah, Charlie's one. Okay, Charlie's going to come on, I guess, in a bit here.
And Lisa, what were some of the challenges? You said there were a lot of parallels that you could relate a lot to things that he said in the book. With challenges that you're facing and ideas on facing those challenges. Could you be a little more specific in terms of either what sort of challenges he was facing and how he met them, or what sort of challenges you faced and how you met them?
Well, some of what he was talking about, and he did put it in psychological terms. My background's also now media psychology. But he didn't really put it in psychological terms, but he described it perfectly. And it's simple things like, first of all, just the idea of complacency and the fact that it's easy. Once something works, the idea that change is something that can trigger fear in people.
Right.
And trying to make sure that people know it's okay to fail. It's failure is part of the discovery process to create great stuff. And you can't do that without the possibility of things not working and learning from those things.
Right.
It also is very much, I think, from a management and leadership standpoint, even more important. The tendency for people when they become under fire, or when and this was a smaller part of the book, but he mentioned it a little bit. There's also a tendency for people to want to control things.
Right.
And particularly, it can happen at all levels. But when you're under stress, when you're under, deadlines and stuff like that, there's a tendency to want to control and limit your risks and all of that. And that's the opposite when you're working in a creative company, and actually when you're working in a lot of companies. From a leadership standpoint, that's probably the worst thing you could do.
Right.
I don't know that he necessarily said that, but that would be, he realized the danger in doing that.
Right.
And I've just seen where it often is the worst thing you can do, because you disengage the people.
Yeah.
It's human nature, but it's something that you have to control.
Yeah.
And again, that starts at the highest levels of the company.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic. That's a perfect example. That's really, really cool. And I remember, I've run into that situation myself, and working in large corporations also. That's kind of like don't panic mode. If we're going to get through this, we're only going to get through it if everybody's calm and listens to each other, even though nobody wants to.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No. So.
Well, I was going to say that putting down part is definitely something that's not part of the Peeragogy project, and I think it's very much we have tried to encourage a review of mistakes and a review of things that didn't work, or just a where the lessons are. Then that's part of the attraction.
Well, it definitely is, and I think that was one of the things that he wanted to make sure people understood. And it's not, again, it can be just a human nature thing. Once something works, you feel comfortable with it. There's a lot of there's a lot of psychology embedded in all of that.
Right.
It's really putting checks on yourself and your thinking to try to make sure you're not defaulting into certain ways of thinking that are going to be really bad. And I think some people don't understand necessarily the problem with those default ways of thinking.
Right.
They work and they're natural. They feel good because it's kind of like as the water flows.
Right.
But they can have some very destructive consequences. So, it's very easy for management, for example, when they are under pressure, to start directing people underneath them and start trying to control the process more, instead of allowing, instead of still being there for support, but allowing the people that idea.
Well, I've seen people in organizations just go underground when they're criticized, and or put down, and you then suppress any potential that they might have or experience that they can bring to bear on the next challenge.
And the idea too was, and this was important, and it's very hard for some people to distinguish this, but the idea is that when they're reviewing the work in the films, which they do regularly before they're released, that the idea is that the comments are not a personal attack on the filmmaker, the director, or whoever's in charge. It's to get the best product.
Right.
So it really it's important that there's a good understanding of that, and that people can handle that. And I know from personal experience, some people can handle that much more easily than others.
Right.
That separation of, we're trying to get the best work and this is our best objective, to you just said something that I'm involved in is bad, you didn't like, and therefore the people recoil. So anyway, so it was I thought it was a really interesting book on many different levels. Really relates to what we're talking about on a number of different levels. And I'm still kind of processing one element of it, because I think I haven't thought it out well enough to be able to explain it. So I'm not going to go into it. But
no, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, I hope it's not because you're afraid you'll be wrong.
No, because I'm afraid I'll just lead you guys into a crazy mess of thoughts. And you're not going to understand anything. I don't want to waste your time, because when I start to try to think it through, it gets convoluted in my head too. So I know it won't go smoothly to other people, but I hope I get there. As far as a concept of a fundamental shift in how you approach things.
Have you finished the book, Lisa?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Well, I want to. Did you read it on Kindle or paper?
Actually, I read it on paper. One of the first books I've ever checked out at the library, I got at the library.
Oh, cool.
So, but now I'm going to buy it. So, because I wanted to mark it up. You know, some books you read and you don't want to do anything with.
Yeah.
But this is the book that I wanted to highlight different areas because there were some really important things. So
I admire your self-discipline in reading it in the library first. I think that's one of the things that I'm going to take away from today's discussion. That's something that I really should do, and I never have the discipline to do that. So you've just inspired me with that.
Yeah, agree.
I haven't done that very regularly. I actually, it's just something I'm trying to do now a little bit because I have so many books. You know, and some books you get and they're just not. First of all, I can try different books I might not normally. Right. And since then, I've actually it wasn't that good, but I went through it and it was a library book, so it went back. So like, okay, I don't have that book sitting around.
Sorry, Joe.
Oh, here he is.
I didn't get the link out in time, but there you are.
I just had time to come in. I was writing an email for work. I had to take time. Hey everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Karen, it's so funny to see you there in the house with Charlotte because it's like I'm so used to seeing Charlotte in that space, and then there you are.
And now it's me.
Coming in from Charlotte, but I know Charlotte's there too. So anyway, how are you?
I'm all right, and yourself?
Well, not bad, not bad. I've been getting ready to go back to the U.S. I hear you guys talking about the book I read on the plane last time I was going over there. I got to pick a new book to read. So if anyone has any suggestions for me, I'd love to hear a book suggestion. So.
Okay, I'll think about it. You're kind of like, you know, I listened to what you have to suggest, and Lisa was just talking about Creativity Incorporated, and I think I'm going to read it. It sounds great.
Yeah. I wish you guys lived in Seattle. I could bring you my copy, but...
Is that where you're going?
Yeah, I'm going to Seattle.
And what's another conference, or are you going for a visit?
No, my sister's wedding, so...
That should be fun.
Should be good. It's a brief visit, just enough time to get jet lag, probably get totally drunk, and then come back. So if I survive, it'll be fun, yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, I feel like I've derailed the conversation.
Yeah, geez, Joe.
All right.
Just come on and talking about big international travel, trying to have work conversation. Well, no, at least so they're having a nice conversation about we're talking about the usefulness of libraries. Lisa got the book from the library, and then Karen was also sharing some positive library experience. She wants to go to the library. Yeah. Yeah, libraries are awesome. I got back into using libraries like late last year. It's really, really helpful. It's really nice. Yeah, like Lisa was saying, you can see stuff you wouldn't find otherwise, and yeah, especially with like renewing books online and stuff now, it's so easy. Usually stay out of trouble.
Yeah, and also, you know, when you want a book, I don't know if it's the same everywhere else. I know it was like this in Barcelona. It's here in Boston that if you want a book and your library doesn't have it, they'll get it from another library to give to you.
Yeah, interlibrary loan.
Yes.
Interlibrary loan.
That's what
Absolutely.
it's called. That's right.
Absolutely. That's good stuff. ILL.
So yeah, no, the library here, the Arlington Library, is really little. It's very petite, and it's so cute, and it's always jam-packed with people. It's great. It's fantastic kind of like meeting place as well. And I know the libraries in Barcelona, a lot of them have cafes on the downstairs where you can get like a sandwich and a beer and a coffee. And so the whole library culture there is alive and thriving. I'm waiting for I think there's a library around here with a cafe. Don't know. What are they like in Chicago?
They don't really have cafes, but they have just like, I don't know, there's a bunch of branches, and every neighborhood has a branch, and the biggest one is like a 8-story massive building downtown. There's like a art gallery and garden on the top. Yeah, no, it's a really good system. They have a really good website now. No, it's one of the biggest public library collections in the world. It's like top 20 or something. But yeah,
Great.
Yeah, it's really nice.
I know our library system here also in Arlington, we have really good, some fantastic people working in the system. So we have really good films and book clubs. And next week we have, I think it's international books, so that if you've read, the people who go to that particular book club, there are, I don't know, like 15 book clubs in this library. And the international one, people have been in that for decades, and they're really well read and total peeragogy. You go there with your the book that you want to recommend, and everybody goes with the book they want to recommend, and it's just a fantastic way of sharing information about what to read. And wait, hold that up again, Joe. I didn't see that. Oh yes, I will. Wow, that's good. Wait, hold that up again. That looks great. Oh, fantastic cover. Very cool. Very cool. I'll wait. I'll wait in the library lines with that. Flash it about.
Yeah. So yeah, we got to get ourselves on the list. I've been talking a lot about libraries with Ray Puzio, one of my good friends from Planet Math, and like, I don't know, we go around and around on these things, but basically we were thinking if we could create a really nice online mathematics library or other specialized subject libraries. Those things are like the core of a university. You know, if you had a really good library online, like you're kind of, I don't know what percentage of the way, 50% of the way towards having a really nice university online for free too. I mean, maybe, you'd need that. We wouldn't have a cafe, but we'd have something. So.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's such a nice way of sharing ideas. And, I mean, even waiting in the line to check out books, the number of recommendations I've had for things that I probably wouldn't take off the shelf myself, because I'm not in that, Dewey Decimal System part. I don't go to that area. And I'm standing in line with someone who does, who's fascinated with something I've never heard about. And it's a great way of sharing information and sharing ideas and staying away from the kind of like insular kind of, how you get stuck in investigating like a laser one area when you're working on a PhD or something. It's a really nice way to kind of like, for me, to take me out of that and say, oh, look, there's this aspect of life too that people are investigating. So it's interesting for me in that. Libraries are great. And Lisa, libraries where you are? Oh, she's muted.
The libraries where I am are, LA County seem to go with a branch, a small local branch sort of approach with a big downtown library, probably similar to what Charlie mentioned. And the books, they have books there. There's not a huge selection of books. So when it comes to like psychology and the things I'm interested in, I have way more books on the subjects than they do. So they usually end up ordering what I'm looking for. But they can get the times they give you can be long, but like in one case they got me that creativity book in like a couple days, which is pretty good. You pick it up at your local library, drop it off at your local library, and there's quite a few people there. I'm always amazed how many people are in these libraries. Just when there's school, it seemed like there was groups working at tables.
Great.
It's not just for the computers, but it's some people are working on computers, but you have groups of kids working at the tables, and very, very active.
Cool.
You would think with everything going online and everything else kind of going on that there wouldn't be as much activity, but they're very, very busy.
Great. I love seeing groups of people sitting around a table, everybody online showing each other different sites and talking about different kind of areas of interest. I mean, I know in education, because I've kind of been out of it for the last 2 years, but the smartphones were really making a massive impact on the way that we worked with the kids. And just watching the kids get all excited about, I don't know, understanding different species of frogs in Indonesia, and being able to get all of this information about them so instantly. I mean, the whole online thing was such a nice incentive for kids because they could find fascinating information instantly and share it instantly around a table. I mean, it's one thing to share information on the internet, but I think, at least as you were saying, like when you're sitting around a table with a bunch of people, it's a lot more immediate, and I think that's why the why there are so many. I was thinking of this as I was working. It makes a really big difference for business people, and Lisa, you've probably run into this, to be able to travel and meet face-to-face people that you're working on a deal with. So much easier than doing it online. Even if you have like what are they called? Video conferences and stuff. I don't know. Do you find that it's the face-to-face interaction is more powerful, or do you find the internet kind of Skype meetings useful?
You can do Skype meetings to get over some of it because it's better than not meeting at all.
Mm-hmm.
But the interaction person to person is big because a lot of times things come up not during the meetings. First of all, Skype meetings and conference calls, people just get tired of, and it's easy to get distracted. So,
right.
So like 2 hours and you're done. Whereas if you have face-to-face meetings, you can actually have like all-day meetings, and break them up, but resume. And a lot of times, some really interesting things come out of those things said when people are on break or at lunch. And that sometimes can be where the progress happens in those spaces, particularly if there's a difference of opinion and people are having a hard time resolving an issue. Those are the times where things can pop up that make the whole trip worthwhile, and it's not necessarily when you're sitting in the conference room chugging through an agenda. So I think that's the other thing that face-to-face meetings provide that you don't get online or elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's. I mean, for me, that's just fascinating that technology is really useful and you have access to so much information. But really, when it comes down to really sorting out the issues in any sort of a problem that you're facing as an organization or an individual, it really helps to be with the person physically to work things out. And as you said, chat over things over, a tortilla or something. Instead of around the formal, especially when you're staring at a screen, kind of drives me a little crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. But Charlotte and I were struggling a little bit with the very brilliant dashboard this morning. Has anyone used it recently, and can you help us?
Working for me like slightly intermittently. I'm not quite sure what the issue was. Maybe it's just got so much stuff in it that it's got a bug or something. But it was working yesterday. Let me see if it's working right now.
Okay. All right. Because it was fun, and I was trying to use it too, because it's kind of helping me to get my head around everything that Peeragogy is doing. But I was having trouble.
It's got some kind of issue right now. I don't know if that's due to GitHub or the preview system or some bug in the code or what it is. So I think we should just do it here. So I'm not quite sure.
Lisa, it's interesting getting back to what you were saying about running about businesses. I remember one of the difficult things that I ran into was finding the right amount of control so that everybody felt completely comfortable giving feedback, constructive supportive criticism. And so that part of being a good manager was making sure that you were open, that you were never offended by anything, that people could say anything to you and you would nod your head and say, oh, really? Okay, thanks. No. And at the other hand, when you're trying to complete a project and there's a deadline for the Department of Education or something and things need to be done, it's really hard for me anyhow to figure out exactly how much control I can have, how much I can say, like, what are you doing now? How long is it going to take you to finish that particular document? And if you can't do it, is it okay if I give that task to someone else?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just found that finding the right level of control was really tricky. How do you deal with that?
Well, I think that's a challenge, and I think even that structure, people require and want different levels of structure too.
Good point.
One of the organizations that I worked for, I saw the evolution, and it was one that was more Peeragogy based. Mm-hmm. It was a very weird culture by most people's standards as far as how does this work, but it worked very well. Some executives came in from the outside, and they didn't understand how it worked, so they started trying to put it together in a way that would worked for them, that made sense to them, and it created some problems that I don't know that they still recognize, because all of this is kind of happening unconsciously. It's not really understood. But the need for control is hard, and I think one of the things that things that helps is keeping the goal clear, that we're working on the goal and goal focused, and deadline focused, giving people autonomy to get it done, and when you're not sure how it's going, you're giving them the responsibility and a bit of the control. And if it looks like somebody might be struggling, you can ask them, do they need help, versus should I give X to somebody else?
Right.
And then maybe give them some input into how somebody else can help them, and bring that person in to help them that way. So I think there's very subtle things. There's choices you could make that can help, and how things are communicated. And I think one thing a lot of people just need to understand is the idea that things aren't set and they aren't certain. So people who are real rigid in their thinking and want a system, I want point A to point B to point C, so I know what to expect, may not be the best people for this sort of structure or this sort of environment, just personality-wise. They may fit in some areas. They may work in some areas, but flexibility and ability to adapt are probably the key things.
Let's give Doug
And Doug,
Hey Doug, if you're there, welcome. By the way, Karen, if you change the 4 to a 5, so follow that link again and change the 4 to a 5, and it'll fix it. So the 4 has been, the directory's been moved, that's why.
Oh, this one?
Version 1.1.4, and change the 4 to a 5?
Change the 4 to a 5 would be good, yeah.
Okay. Oh, great. Thank you.
0.5.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Perfect.
Welcome.
Great.
So that link needs to be changed in our events, I think.
Yeah, and maybe if we can get a hold of the page you were just on, we can fix it there.
I was going to comment.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, Doug?
Hello, guys.
Hi.
Hey Doug, welcome back.
It's been a long time. I've been following updates, and I reached out at one point. There was a shared doc that I wasn't quite sure what to make out of.
Yeah, that was a weird, I shared it very, very prematurely because I think we were just talking, Charlotte had a great idea in the meeting, like, hey, why don't we create a charter? And I thought, well, that sounds important. So then I just said, hey, let's create a charter, but I didn't have any more context than that. So you were pinged perhaps a week or two before we should have taken any wraps off of that, but that's just how we roll around here, sorry.
No, well, I was trying to sort of decipher and bridge my cognitive association with the concept of charter with what had been assembled on the pages, and I fell off a cliff. I just couldn't. There was just no way for me to cognitively reconcile the two, and I noticed when I was in the doc that Charlotte was logged in, although obviously not present at the moment, and I sort of pinged her and said, Charlotte, are you there?
And then 2 weeks later, I got back to you.
and by then I was sort of gone. But yeah, so I was curious about that. But the conversation you were just having, although I came in obviously in the middle end of it, a lot of the things I've been involved with and working on of late really revolve around the idea of completely new paradigms for just about everything. And one of the core principles that I've come to subscribe to is that when trying to develop new forms, that it's really important to be completely conscious of where we allow old forms in under the door through sort of lack of attention or vigilance to language. And in the context of sort of group or collective or pedagogical type endeavors, the truth of the matter is that if you eliminate hierarchy and you eliminate the concepts of power and authority and control, which to my mind do not necessarily have to be invited to the party, then what does the alternative look like? And what it means is that, or at least what emerges and resonates loudest for me is sort of the underlying principle or vision of the whole holacracy thing, which is when somebody is experiencing pressure or experiencing challenge or discomfort or demand or whatever it is, that it's up to them to signal to those around them that are involved in helping to address that. And so it's much more of sort of a communication and channel and flow idea. But underlying all of that, for that vision to work, what I've ended up drilling down to and have been working on for the last, I don't know, few years, but especially codifying in the last few months, which we finally have gotten to, is the sort of a foundational concept of values, commonly held and shared values, to which everyone in the endeavor agrees, and underlying and in parallel to the agreement to those values, an agreement amongst everybody to honor them, which is a really sort of probably simple, and for some people, that would precipitate almost a derisive reaction of like, well, yeah, sure. That in the simplicity of it, it can hit some who are a little more jaded as naive. But as a practical matter, if a group of people agree as to what they hold in common from a value standpoint, and they sign an agreement, they make a commitment to honor those, then within that framework, you can really eliminate a lot of the old stuff. And the threshold issue of people that are susceptible to working under that kind of vision really is going to surface in the agreement part. And either they can agree and make the commitment to honor the values that are shared, held, published, and articulated, or they don't. And it becomes a really sort of fundamental, basic, and simple thing. And what, in fact, everybody does is values, yeah, sure, there's no holding to account or agreement, and everybody sort of co-conspires to go out of alignment all over the place. and I think a lot of that is a byproduct of imprinting of an industrial era where, we all had parents until we grew up and became adults, and then we traded those in for bosses. But there was always an authority figure where the buck stopped and who ultimately bore responsibility when we did not do what we were supposed to do. On a behavioral, emotional, cultural imprinting level. So anyway, I've been rambling a bit, but so I think that's sort of the core mechanism to me. What a friend of mine and I have done, which I anticipate and look forward to sharing with the Peeragogy community and getting thoughts, feedbacks, comments on, is what we're calling the Values Manifesto, which is sort of our version of what ClueTrain was in its day, but for today. And what it basically posits, and its vision is targeting the largest of global companies and organizations because they're the greatest offenders against others, against the commons, against the environment, against our survival. And it's targeting them for sort of massive, immediate, implementable organizational transformation. And it's based on the idea that if these large organizations articulate and express their values and set them up as an actual checklist and reference, and distribute it organization-wide from the lowest paid employee to the highest and everybody in between, and everybody signs on and agrees, then the organizational commitment has to be that when somebody raises their hand or says, what I'm being asked to do or what we are doing or what we have been doing is out of alignment, the organization has to first prioritize response to that before any action or resources taken is committed. And it's sort of a really simple but very powerful mechanism and tool for organizational transformation that says we're going to empower every individual to speak, to raise their voice, and to be heard. We are going to prioritize organizational responsiveness to those voices. We recognize there's going to be initial chaos. We recognize there's going to be initial disruption. However, any voice raised, part of the values set and part of the commitment is that that individual will experience no adverse consequence for raising their voice, which speaks to the last point that was raised about trust and safety. And it's really about, you know, it's not like these companies don't know what the right thing is and what they need to do. They just have to do it. And I think the same applies in, you know, whatever scale or level of group endeavor or collaborative human endeavor you look at. That if everybody signs on and everybody agrees, then everybody does the best they can, and when somebody is in need of help or support or demand or resource, they're expressing that, and the world around them in the collaborative collective responds. So anyway, that's my hit and run. I feel like I'm a hit and run specialist in the Peeragogy context.
I wrote it down on the charter page because I felt like that was relevant to it actually is really relevant to what we might think when we say charter. So your voice is recorded in there as fast as I could type it. And it does remind me a lot of this book that Lisa and I have now both read at Pixar. They seem to, of all places, they seem to have something going much along those same lines. Like everyone should speak up. You know, their mission is to make great movies. It's not necessarily to save the planet, but you know, so they focus around that. But hey, at least they're working towards that goal together rather than falling apart.
So you've got nothing on your screen, I think. Were you trying to show us something?
Joe?
Joe?
Are you there?
I was just screen sharing the whole window, but then I switched over to look at it.
It's just a Hangout window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what it used to be, and then I switched over. So, yeah, this is what it used to be. I just wrote down what Doug said on this chart.
Yeah.
What I was going to say about the chart, all I was saying is that that Pixar does something similar. And I think what to put it in a nutshell, what I was thinking about with the charter, I mean, I think what Doug said is really relevant to it. Is kind of what is that? What would that be for Peeragogy? Partly, and like, you know, then the question is also like, how would we make money? Because if making money is one of our things we want to do or value, then we should record that on the charter and not be secretive or furtive about that. So that's all. And we had a bunch of brainstorms about it. You know, so Paula talked about the Media Lab, where they're starting a bunch of community ventures and helping support them. Charlotte mentioned this open ed entrepreneur funding. I was thinking about co-ops. Charlie mentioned Mozilla and other stuff about Wikimedia education.
You know,
I kind of brainstorming. Karen mentioned EFL experiences.
You know, there's a sort of fundamental value service, I think, that's lacking out there, which is just being in the service of providing facilitative services to people that want to undertake things and want to do it in a way that is not predicated on previous hierarchical forms or organizational forms and approaches. And so, part of the packaging of that, framing of that is, what are the ingredients? A group of people want to come together and they want to do something. A group of people want to approach how they do that in a expressly non-industrial, non-hierarchical, non-power authoritative or managed or directed way where there's a designated leader, and that in that context, how do you go about it? And, what kind of facilitation would help folks in that place? So, I think that's a really basic, simple service offering that we're in the sweet spot of.
Well, I can give you update on our publishing organization in New England, and I'm trying to move it towards that kind of a non-hierarchical structure, but the entrenched mindset of people is just amazing to see.
Herding cats.
To see it emerge, because I'm now the president of this organization, and there are former presidents and founders and board members, and the core board is now pretty collaborative, but like the people who founded it are fighting a pitched battle against transparency, against centralization of documents, and it's just astounding to see it, and kind of almost a little bit amusing.
Have you ever sort of confronted them about what is it you're afraid of? Like, what's the fear? Because it's a fear response. That whole
it is a feer
protective
response.
thing.
I know it is. Yeah.
Have you ever sort of asked them point blank, like, what are you afraid of?
Yeah,
I don't know. I've found in my managerial experience that when I put things point blank like that, people get really defensive.
Yeah.
And that I've had to kind of try and...
They don't want to be afraid.
Yeah.
In fact, like, for example, they started a secret Facebook group and purposely didn't invite me. Because I would tend to want to share things. And I think what they're in charge of a certain event, and I think they are a little bit afraid of it failing, and they want to control everything so that they can get enough people registered and so forth. But so I think fear of, I don't know. I mean, it seems like.
Well, I think for me, it's similar to the point that Lisa made. People are afraid of change. That in general, that once you have a routine established, you can predict what's going to happen, and so you're ready for anything that happens. But life doesn't work that way. So when you have someone new coming in, I've found in my experience that the staff who've been there before are a little bit like, oh my God, like I'm going to come into work and I don't know what's going to happen, and that's scary.
And
right.
Like for example, I put them on Asana, which is a project management program you probably know about, Doug. But
yeah.
And there's a woman who was on the secret Facebook group who's been doing some publicity, and I said, well, we're moving our dialogue about all of our projects to Asana so that we can all participate and collaborate better, and centralizing our documents. And she says, well, I'm not on Asana. First of all, I'm not on Asana, and if you need me, you can reach me by email. And
okay, so that's a really interesting thing. So here's another dimension of all this. And I apologize, by the way, for my camera. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and I've just learned to acquiesce to the technology gods. But I apologize for not being visually present. There is a yin and yang to each individual's participation, engagement in a collaborative or collective endeavor, and my belief is, and it may or may not be right, but my belief is that in service to the collective endeavor itself, the collective has an interest in supporting in whatever form that support needs to take. So if there is somebody who says, I don't use X, or I can't use X, or I don't want to use X, then there should be a mechanism in whatever the collective array is for somebody who is facilitative in that way, who says, no problem. If email is your mode of channeling communication, email to me and I'll put it up on Asana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then I find that I've done that, and I find that people are tend to kind of want to know what's going on, so they eventually come over to the collective venue.
Yeah, but I mean, eventually, I think if you provide that kind of facilitative support, then the next step is for the person who only does email to say, well, gee, okay, I appreciate that it's over there, but I'm not getting what's going on over there. And then there's somebody else who can get on a session with that person and say, well, let me show you how this platform works.
Mm-hmm.
And let me.
Yeah, I have
help
offered,
you.
and I continue to offer kind of open office hours where I will demonstrate. I've helped several people get on.
Yeah.
They haven't said, "Oh, this is just fabulously wonderful," like I did when I saw it, but they are participating, and
Right.
the effect of their participation, even more important, is being felt in the success of the organizational effort.
Right.
So,
right.
yeah, so that's cool. I mean, it's the eyes on the prize sort of thing.
But I mean, it's sort of that concept of unconditional love applied in this context. Like, love them in the way they want to be loved. If they want to send emails, then make it doable for them to send emails. And if they want to know what's going on, introduce them to the platform or a mechanism to voyeuristically follow it. And, eventually, folks will generally give up the ghost. You know what I mean? Like the resistance and the fear stuff will fade away, and they'll get in the swing of things. But it may take a while.
Yeah, I tend to be impatient, and well, my first response was to explain why we were doing it, and I think that's good in a way. Like, we'd like to see you on there, and I think you'll like it. This is why we're doing it.
Right.
And then, but I'm a human being too, and I'm trying to herd this, passel of cats into the nightly corral, and it's really, it's all I can do to have the patience to do that.
Yeah, 50% of an endeavor is the doing of it, and 50% is always the human beings in the doing of it and dealing with their human beingness.
Yeah, I just like to shake them and, if not around a little bit.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, all you can do is, work your way from the most resistant, weakest link, most fearful, most adversarial up, and just sort of, coach them along. And people generally, if their passion and commitment to the core mission is there. There are people that are anarchists that just want to throw bombs, right?
Right.
And their sole purpose is to engage in areas and groups and stuff where they can sort of set fires and fan flames and stuff. But, if everybody's there for the right reasons, sooner or later, eventually, everybody is either on board or there's a designated hitter to help carry them to the finish line.
I think that the question is really about that the first onboarding thing, and like, this is not meant about IPNI, but like, just pick anything. I'll pick Planet Math as one that I'm familiar with as a similar thing. Like, when we first started, I think we were brainstorming. We were saying, wow, computers and math, if we put them together, that's going to be amazing, and we'll create this new thing that like is completely revolutionizing the way education is and stuff. And all the people who are used to doing education the old way were not interested. They were saying, okay, well, that may be cute, but they didn't see that revolutionizing anything would be a good idea or something they would want to participate in. It's like, no, I like it. My view from the front of the classroom where I got the chalk in my hand and I hand out the grades. And, I get a nice hefty paycheck at the end of the month. Why would I want to change anything about that? And I mean, who can argue with them, right? I mean, you know, I could say, oh, well, but it would be so much better, and you'd enhance access for people in Africa, and blah, blah, blah. And they could say, okay, well, look, you can get out of my office right now because I think that that's a bunch of hoo-ha.
Right.
And you know, I mean, I can't argue with people in that sort of situation. And I don't know what version of that or what flavor or how much of that is going on with IPNI, but maybe it's something like that. If we were to say, look, Peeragogy, let's transform all of the universities, and while we're at it, we're going to transform all of the businesses. I mean, it's going to be hard to sell it to people who aren't already moved by that. And for those who are moved by it, then we don't need to sell it at all. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I should probably back off a little bit, and I do periodically realize I need to do that and just let them kind of communicate the way they want to. And you know, I keep throwing Asana links to them.
Do what you can.
So, you know, wishful thinking.
Well,
you know, I say, like, you know,
I haven't used Asana, but I think it's like, you know, I remember with P2PU, it's like they went from one issue tracker to another issue tracker, and it was very, you know, which issue tracker do you want me to use? Is it this or that? And then ultimately I put lots of issues in there, and I think I hand moved a bunch of my issues from one to the other. And then a month later, I just got a big list of like rejected suggestions, you know, closed issues, sorry, we're not going to implement it. So it's like, okay, well, that was a nice exercise in futility. Like, so I think we got to go back to Doug's point about like the central mission. It may not be IPNI's central mission to do the stuff you want to do, but that is a vision for something. And if you can clarify that, you know, maybe you find a few people in that organization and a few other people down in, you know, Texas and a few other people in California or whatever, and those are the people who want to do that. And then you won't have all of this kind of fighting about.
Yeah, it's not exactly fighting. It's
well, okay.
like Lisa. I like Lisa's comment. You know, ask them what their concerns are and not their fears. Because nobody wants to have a fear, but everyone has concerns. But yeah, I mean, I just need to talk it out sometimes. It's really good to get it out here.
And sometimes if you ask them, I had typed it here too, but sometimes if you ask them, you know, you explain this is what we're trying to do, what are your concerns, and then you can also ask them, do they have suggestions?
Yeah.
You may find that, you know, with a little bit of something, you know, you may have missed an opportunity to easily bring more people in, or understand where the hang-up is based on their suggestions. So then they can be part of the solution process.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's a hurdle for me personally because I can see slippage.
Well, you know, my wife and I were recently in Israel, and we went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and there's a ladder underneath this window, and there are 7 Christian authorities that control this particular site. All of them are Christian, and none of them get along with each other. And they are now squabbling over a replacement of what is the 3rd ladder that was put in place in service to repairing a window that first came up for repair 125 years ago. The window is yet to be repaired, but the ladder is now heading into its 4th replacement, and them attempting to agree about the 4th ladder. So, you know, I think it's really important to be wary and careful and attentive to not getting caught up in tools.
Yeah, I know.
because tools are like this great, you know, secret co-conspiracy black hole for people to not get on with what they're together for.
I have to take on the bridges between the different tools that people are using.
Right.
And I don't have the time to do that.
Right.
I was just thinking that we have a listserv here in Arlington, and it's fantastic. And I mean, there's a lot of sharing of plants and services and stuff that goes on in this town, which is brilliant, really. And every now and again, someone gets really angry about something. And the other day, we have a bike path, and it's fantastic. And you know, I mean, it's called a bike path, but it's for baby buggies and skateboarders and everyone. And every now and again, you know, people get into a squabble about the use of the bike path. And last week, someone was really upset because there was, you know, a biker that was going too fast and almost knocked them off the path. And, you know, it happens. There are pedestrians that block the entire thing. And when you're on a bike, they're irritating. And there are people with baby buggies who do. I mean, it doesn't really matter what the means of transportation you use is.
Right.
If you happen to have an attitude that is arrogant, you're going to piss off other people who use other means of transportation. And so the idea is to, you know, respect other people.
I see what you're.
But one other thing that I'm getting at is, you know, like for me, it doesn't really matter what nationality, what ethnicity, what religion the people who are arguing about the latter is. They happen to be people who are in that religion and they're arguing about something silly. I think people tend to be argumentative. And in my experience, I've worked in a number of different organizations in educational management and also in teaching. And I have to say that I've run into the most difficult teachers are the ones who say, I have been teaching out of this textbook for 20 years. I have all of the material necessary for this book, and nobody's going to tell me that I need to change my book. Even if you say, like, look, right now, I mean, let's say I've done public and private. Let's say this is a private institution, and it did happen in a private institution, and you have to worry about keeping your private institution afloat because there's competition, and there are other institutions that are using, and this might be applicable to IPNE, that are, you know, up to date with technology, and the kids are using smartphones in the class, and you have someone who's technically speaking, a language teacher, and they're using a book that was published before a lot of the information about, you know, multiple intelligences and social emotional learning and stuff like that, before that stuff even existed. There are brilliant textbooks now for language teaching, and language is a social, you learn it socially. I mean, you can get things like the Rosetta Stone, and you learn certain things about communicating as a tourist, basically. But the Rosetta Stone it's an individual thing between you and the computer, and it's not a social thing, and language is a very social thing. And so if someone's using a 20-year-old book that was designed before any of the pedagogy that came up in the last 10 years came up, then they're going to be holding the institution back. And eventually they're going to threaten the institution because they refuse to move forward with the times, because they're comfortable with their routines. And that's the kind of person that I've found it very difficult to kind of, you know, you listen, you try to be open, you try to be willing to kind of like accept everybody's concerns or fears or whatever, and you try not to threaten their ego. But I read something the other week which was brilliant, which was about the difference between self-awareness and self-absorption. And it's a really significant difference, and I find it really easy to work with people who are willing to be self-aware and willing to look at their own shortcomings, their own weaknesses, their own fears. And on the other hand, working with people who live in their ego and just say, like, no, this is me, this is how I do it, and I'm right. And I think that's a really significant factor. And for me, the most difficult thing is working with the people who, like, I feel, you know, like here I am, an egotistical maniac saying, hey, I'm self-aware. I'm not. You know, but I try. At least I'm aware of the fact that I have to be careful of my ego.
Self-aware.
Yeah, I have to be careful of my ego because my ego will trip me up. And at least I know that, and I feel lucky that I know that, and I know that there are other people who don't know that yet, and their ego does trip them up, and they tend to be the ones in any organization I've worked with. Those people tend to be the ones who I find kind of the most challenging, because they are, to a certain extent, threatening the life of the organization because they're not willing to try new things and to change and to say, oh, all right, times are changing,
well,
you know.
And with IPNE, it's like everything's working under pressure. You know, we have 4 big events coming up. I know, you're just there you go. There we go. We have 4 big events, you know, and they're just like, everything has to work well.
Right.
Or,
You know, the question, the real question, though, if you get down to the cases, the real question, bottom line is, unless everybody's on board, unless everybody's pulling in the same direction, it's a direct diminution of the end delivery or result or achievement, and that applies whether it's on an organizational level, on a work group level, or whether it applies on a planetary level. If we're not commons oriented, and if we're not collectively geared, and if we're not paying attention to making sure that we bring everybody, and I mean everybody, along, if there's anybody who's put in a class or on a list or at the end of a line who doesn't get to come, who doesn't get to join, who doesn't get to contribute, or doesn't get brought along, even if their sole function ends up being dead weight from an experiential or perceptual or an awareness standpoint, but they're a member in the organization, right? That on an attentional scale and valuation, and this is why I always reference it back to core values, somebody's presence, somebody's name on a list where their opt-in put them there is a value. And if we don't address and include everybody, then we're ultimately shaving stuff off the back end of what we achieve and what we deliver. And as on a planetary level, frankly, if we don't include everybody, we're all going to die, because a global extinction doesn't discriminate and doesn't have, VIP rooms or VIP lists. A global extinction takes everything and everybody, including all of us. So unless we can get to a place where our orientation and our values set and our prioritization equalizes all of the things that speak to those values. And if the value, a stated value, is inclusion, and a stated value is for and with and in service to everybody, then everybody matters. And sometimes that's at the expense of the initiative, it's at the expense of the pace of change, it's at the expense of achieving a particular goal, program, or a project. This
is a really good discussion for me.
But I mean, I think there's a core underlying value inquiry and evaluation that needs to be made and thought about and incorporated. And
just to take what you said, and one of the things I put on Asana was long-range planning. And I shared a mission statement document with everybody, kind of like, and I sort of expect a peeragogical response, and it's different. It's somewhat peeragogical. I mean, but it's not. There's such an uneven response. People come to me and say, why don't we design a mission statement? And it's there. Use the search box to look, search mission statement.
Well, and to a certain extent, that's sort of an example, right? It's how do you respond, incorporating and assuming the complete array and diversity of level of sophistication, level of technical capacity, sophistication, awareness, means. The truth of the matter is the vast bulk of the world's population isn't online. Are we addressing that in visions for changing and moving the planet in the right direction? No. and the same thing applies organizationally. If you've got, I remember, there's a workshop that I teach, and there was an organization I used to teach it out of in Westchester, and there were a group of people that sort of took the organization into a much more egalitarian and open orientation about getting students enrolled from all sorts of socioeconomic diverse, walks of life and backgrounds and stuff. And the center was located in Westchester. Westchester is is a center of gravity for wealth and elitism and all sorts of stuff. And there were people in the center that did not like that. Mm-hmm. And there was a fundamental pull that those people exerted that ended up effectively killing that administration of the center. Put it out of business. Yeah. So
No, I've gained some really valuable awareness here, and I kind of had that instinct in the back of my head. You're coming on too strong, Charlotte, and it's just like everything seems to be a crisis. So it's like got to get people moving, and
and maybe the priority isn't getting people moving. Maybe the priority is getting people comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to add to say that I was working in one school. It was a fantastic kind of a private. It was an excellent private school where in the country where I was living. And my second year there, I was promoted to head of the foreign languages department. And when I was promoted, I said, like, no, please don't do this. I'll be able to do, really, to the owner, I said, yes, okay, I have a lot more training in this. I'm a lot more up to date. But if you replace the current director of the foreign language department with someone new like me, you're going to be making my life impossible. And you're going to be making what I'm able to do, the changes I'm able to make in the department from just being a regular teacher are much greater when I'm just a regular teacher and making little suggestions than if you say, oh, wow, we have this fantastic new teacher. Hey, she's going to replace the director who's been the director for 10 years. I mean, it was suicide. And I said, please don't do this. And she was like, no, I'm going to be behind you. We're going to do this. And it was hell. It was a year of absolute hell for me. And it was basically because the woman who I replaced was so furious at having had her authority questioned in such a public way. She was humiliated. Right. That it was, and I'm really, like I have a reputation for being a great active listener, and I'm all into pedagogy and stuff like that. It was just like, lambs to the slaughter. It was because I was new in the school. Yeah. There are 75 teachers, and they all like her. They go to her parties. They've been going to her parties for 10 years, and I come in from, I was in Barcelona. I'd been in Madrid, and I came in from Madrid, and I was like, who's this foreigner taking over? And so I think there's a lot of human psychology that goes into running a business, and there is a lot of, you have to, even if you're running the ship and, you see, okay, old ways of working are actually going to make this ship sink, which is what we're doing right now with the planet. I mean, here we are in the United States, 1950s to the 1980s, we were having a massive party, and everybody was partying, and now here we are cleaning it up and dealing with the hangovers, and nobody wants to deal with the reality of, like, oh, a petrol-based culture is probably not the smartest way of running the planet. So we have to really radically change the paradigms. But like I walk dogs for a living right now, and so I run into a lot of people who don't want to face the fact that actually we do have to change the paradigm. Like there are a lot of people who say, no, we've been living like this all the time since the time began. I used to work on the racetrack, and I remember in the Meadowlands outside of New York City and New Jersey, and we had an exchange student from Germany come over. And she was shocked. I mean, talk about culture shock. She was working with us, and she was talking to one of the guys there, and she said, what's your ancestry? And he said, I'm American. And she said, yeah, oh, Native American? You're an Indian? And he was like, I'm no Indian. No, I'm American. My family has been in this country since time began. And he really believed that. There was no way that we could convince him that, no, he looked European-based. And so there is a culture of, like, I'm not changing. I've been running this ship for a long time. I know what I'm doing. Don't come along and tell me that the ship is sinking, because it hasn't sunk for the last 30 years. Well, so yeah, it's like it can be challenging.
Yeah,
I have to probably call a halt because I have to be somewhere at 3. But you guys can continue talking if you'd like. You want to.
It's interesting and absorbing. I think we're onto something, and maybe we should wrap it up and then continue. So I've taken a bunch of notes into the Peeragogy Charter because I feel like we're getting to things that we actually care about. So, and Karen, again, I think all of your really interesting stories and experiences are important. And Lisa, I haven't had a chance to really put in the chat here. I'll just copy that into the thing under your name there, if that's okay. Because I think you've added some stuff that we don't have an entry for you on that because you weren't here last week. So let's continue after a bit of a break. That's my thing. But I think that this charter should be somehow helping us to deal with the things that we care about, and figuring out what those things are and doing something about it. So, yeah, I'm sorry I was late to the thing, and I feel like I threw off the meeting for 10 minutes. But then, Doug, thank you so much for coming, because I think you got us back onto something.
No, this has been really, really amazing. I like getting the the actual specific, an outside of pedagogy example in too, because it helps me in my own endeavor, and I think it sort of demonstrates some of the patterns that we've been discussing. And
I put there at the end of the chat. I put a link to the document that I've been taking notes onto. I think it's not homework, but if you feel like you want to continue, one way to continue would be to hop over there and make some comments or add some text or add some questions. Because as Doug pointed out when he first hopped in, that it was basically just a blank page that we started putting in a few notes.
Nice. So you've got all the notes in there, or?
I think not the entire chat, but I took pretty detailed notes on what people were saying. And
no, I've got them
okay.
now, and I'll put them on the event page.
Sorry,
Okay,
that is not nice. Okay, anyone with the link can edit. So you all have the link. You can now edit it.
Very cool.
Sorry about that. So yeah, and I just want to. I don't know if she's out there listening or made it all the way to the end of the video, but there's someone new, Natalie, who's been making some comments in the G+, and she's contacted me privately. She's really excited about Peeragogy, so if you see her, say hi. It goes by Rope Bunny though on the forum. So.
Okay. Well, I'll stop the broadcast. Everybody come back next Monday at 1 Eastern Time. Bye.
Cool.
Bye.